Super. So before I hand over to Councillor Welton, I'm going to quickly run through the agenda for this evening's meeting. So to start us off, the Climate Action Group co-chairs, Councillor Welton and Ramya Venkataraman, will provide their introductory remarks. After that, the community leads for the 4 thematic working groups will provide updates for each of their work streams, followed by a short Q&A session. There's then going to be a bit more of an interactive session where we were thinking of splitting into breakout groups, but I think we're quite a small group this evening, so we might all just stay together in one group to review progress since the launch and to discuss the forward plan for the next 6 months. And finally, we'll cover any other business and run through the dates for future meetings. So I'm just going to hand over to Councillor Welton now.
Thank you, Dominique. I'd like to start by welcoming and thanking everyone who has joined us this evening. We launched Merton's Climate Action Group in January because we recognise the fundamental role that local residents, businesses and organisations have to play in delivering Merton's ambition of becoming a net zero carbon borough by 2050. Last November, we adopted Merton's Climate Strategy and Action Plan, which found that less than 2% of the borough's emissions are within the council's direct control. This group to accelerate action on change that can't be done by the council alone or individuals, but also as well to help community-led projects which reduce emissions in the borough. Given that we've adopted this new approach, when we set up this group, we agreed to look at it every 6 months, but also as well bring the different working groups together to look at what has been achieved so far, how the group is achieving its purpose, and discuss what our next priority should be. We also recognise this group is in its early stages of development, and there is still a lot to learn, with only one of the subgroups having met for the first time last month. So clearly more projects will be developed than others. But we'd like to take this opportunity to review what has worked well and not so well since January in order to inform the next 6 months of Climate Action Group activities. This session is to learn, so please feel free to actually put questions in the box because I do welcome your feedback and your views on how things have progressed. I'm also conscious as well that COVID restrictions have limited the amount of in-person engagement the group has able to do. It does have its benefits. It's more environmentally friendly to have online meetings, but hopefully sometime in the next 6 months, I will have the chance to meet some of you in person and actually engage directly. But I am pleased with the amount of interest we've had from the local community, considering the circumstances, though unfortunately it has been online. In addition, the current circumstances do provide an opportunity to embed climate action and carbon reduction as part of the COVID recovery. As some of you are aware, the council is currently running one of our biggest ever engagements called Your Merton to understand how the pandemic has affected the way people live, work and study in Merton, but also as well to create a communal vision for the borough. This consultation closed on the 7th of July, so please do contribute to help shape that vision. I'd also as well like to flag the Merton Neighbourhood Fund, which will be launching in early July, which will support local projects which enhance community spaces and invest in infrastructure across the borough. I encourage the Climate Action Group to bid for funding from the Neighbourhood Fund in order to help develop and deliver their community-led projects. This is one of the key priorities for the council, and I can assure you as Cabinet member, we will look fondly on good bids which do include climate change being embedded, because we do want to bring these projects forward. Finally, can I take this opportunity of thanking the community leads, Ramya, Kelly, Carola, Diane, Luke and Mahmood, Jodie and James, for all your input to date, which has been greatly invaluable. I'd also like to thank and take this opportunity of thanking the work of Katie Halter, who recently left the council, for all her help and contribution in setting up this group, but also as well Dominique as well. They've been invaluable in terms of their work as climate change officers for the council, and that officer support has been absolutely vital in terms of doing these things. We achieve more together than we achieve alone. So all our volunteer communities and officers have given a great deal of contribution towards this group over the 6 months. And without that, a lot of these things wouldn't have been possible. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to my co-chair, Rama. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Hello, everyone. I'm Rama. I have been a Merton resident for 7 years now, a little over 7 years. I have 2 children, and my professional background is from the energy sector. It's been an absolute pleasure to co-chair this group and for the last 6 months. I've learned a lot in the process. It's been very, very inspiring to see the people in the community who are selflessly and tirelessly dedicating themselves to climate action initiatives. There aren't too many, I must say, and we're hoping that that can change through the activities that this group is aiming to launch or working on at the moment. But the few people, and when I say few, as a percentage of the number of residents in our borough. But whoever is there is definitely punching well above their weight and doing a lot to promote climate action. What we want is more and more people participating in this. And also, just on a personal note, the Merton Garden Streets initiative that we launched, actually it's brought a lot of, just seeing the number of bees in our front garden, rise by more than 100% compared to other spring and summer seasons we've had, and seeing, how much I and my family have, and my children have enjoyed seeing the impact. I think that's been really wonderful. And I think, I just wanted to point that out, because it's not just about climate action. It's definitely contributed to the well-being as well, given the past year and what we've been through. So I specifically look after engagement and funding for this group. And before I go into so on the engagement side, the main objective or purpose of this group, when we started out, it was quite open-ended. We had some terms of reference, which were kindly provided by the council, but nevertheless, it was quite open-ended. I think 6 months on, I'd like to say that all the community leads, what we feel is that our role definitely is to energize and facilitate community climate action. We don't really intend to become another charity or an independent organization. We very much appreciate the partnership with the council and the ability to connect all the different groups and individuals within the borough who are already doing some amazing climate action work. In terms of the communications, there's obviously the personal communication and the digital and social media sides to it. So on the digital and social media side, we've had some help with keeping our Twitter account up to date. And we've launched an Instagram and Facebook group for the Merton Garden Streets initiative. But that's definitely an area that we need more help. So we have advertised for a community, a theme lead in the climate action group for the digital and social media engagement side of it. Because we do get contacted by a lot of individuals in the borough, and we make it a point to get back to them, reply to them individually, make sure that everyone feels welcome and included. And that definitely takes time. So we do need, and so it doesn't allow one person to do both the individual communication side of it as well as the digital social media side of it. So we do need extra support there. So moving on to the challenges, like I said, we already need some support. We also need more volunteers. I think when team leads take you through the projects, you see there are some really amazing initiatives that we are working on. We need more volunteers just to spread the word, to give some of their time. We also need that to be reasonably reliable, because otherwise it does undermine the efforts and the goals of the projects and the people who are working towards it. Yes, we continue to face the challenge that some communities remain harder to reach. Some communities in certain parts of the borough, for example, the borough, are harder to reach. We've been focusing our efforts to promote whatever initiatives we are launching much more in the east of the borough. For example, Kelly can talk to you a lot about that when she takes you through the Merton Garden Streets project, but it still continues to remain hard to reach. So if there are people who can help us with that aspect, in getting more people aware of the climate action group's work, that would be great. That would be a great starting point. And then hopefully we get more and more people participating and volunteering in the projects as well. And another area, I think it's not just for Merton as a country. I think it is a little bit of an unclear, ambiguous area at the moment. All the different skills pathways that are needed for transition to a green economy. And there is some guidance and support that is available. But I think in the borough, personally, I've come across people who are trying to pivot their careers and they want to do more in the area of sustainability and climate action, not just as a volunteer, but professionally, but they just don't know how to do it. And I think there is whereas our borough, for example, definitely needs more support. So I think there's definitely a job creation opportunity here, because there are people who want jobs and there are some jobs that we can create, but that pathway is still unclear. It is something that the Climate Action Group is thinking of actively as we develop the projects as well. But if anyone else has any ideas, or you're part of a group that's working to develop more specific skills pathways, then please come forward and get in touch with us. We'd be great to learn what you do. On the funding side, just baseline, when the group was set up, there was absolutely no allocated funding. So we were starting from zero. I think getting into the Climate Action Group's work, it was very much a case of let's develop the projects and then you can apply for funding and see how that goes. So I'm happy to say we've been successful in securing sponsorships for the first initiative that we launched, which is the Merton Garden Streets initiative. And that has come from both the private for-profit as well as from not-for-profit organizations. We have made some funding applications which we're waiting to hear back on. One of them is the BIG, which is the Business Innovation and Growth South London Partnership with Kingston University. It's a project under the Greening Merton theme, and Kelly can speak more about it. We're waiting to hear about that application. Then there's the Climate Action Fund and Future Neighborhoods Fund. These two are for initiatives around the green economy. Again, Diana and Carola will speak to you about this. What we've also done is to set up an account in Space Hive, which is a specific crowdfunding platform for community projects. And we're hoping that to raise some funding through it for the 3rd planting day of the Merton Garden Streets initiative. And I think that'll be a good learning experience, and just to see and to understand how well received and how easy or difficult it was to raise funding through this platform. Another thing that we are exploring through Burchak, actually, she's in the meeting here, is the eligibility of the Climate Action Group's projects for certification for carbon offsets. There are some specific criteria that projects have to meet in order to be eligible for carbon offsets, but it is something that we're looking into. So if there are other projects, if anyone's interested in exploring that for their project, please let us know and we can check. We can tell you what the criteria is that's been set up by some of the standard bodies. So we are checking this against the gold standards criteria. There are other organizations like Carbon Trust, for example, who might also do this. So if that does happen, then that would be a good source of another source of funding. Even locally, if businesses want to invest in our projects, that would be great. And yes, and like Councillor Welton said, there are a number of projects that we have in the pipeline, and we will be applying for the Neighbourhood SIL fund for those projects shortly. But yeah, you'll hear more about that from the community leads. And yeah, from a transparency perspective, just want to quickly share with you an overview of the funding. We did set up a bank account for the group with NatWest. We did this mainly because of the Merton Garden Streets initiative. So yeah, the main donation into it, the first £20 was my testing whether the bank account is working or not. And then we basically received, Romulus is Centre Court's current owner. We received a £1,000 donation towards Merton Garden Streets, which we've used for the purchase of plants. And that's, yeah, so the current balance is back again at 20. We don't really intend to, we don't expect this bank account to be too active because, like I said, we mainly see ourselves as facilitating projects. But if there is a need for it, then we do have the bank account. For any outgoing transfers, there's 2 people that need to co-sign. So it was Katie Halter and myself up until this point, but one other person from the group will nominate someone else in her place for outgoing transfers. Yeah, so that's all I had. I know it's a bit of a bank accounts and it's a little bit of a dry note to end on, but hopefully the description of all the projects from the other team leads will get you energized. So maybe we can start with the green economy. Diana and Carola.
Yes, hello everyone. So Carola and myself are the co-chairs for the green economy theme. So I'm going to go first and then Carola is just going to follow on from me. To introduce myself, I'm privileged to do 2 jobs within the borough. So I run the Merton Chamber of Commerce and I also run Sustainable Merton, which is Merton's local environmental charity. So that gives me, I think, a great privilege to be able to connect with businesses and use their leadership and their connections to support climate action within the borough, and obviously the reach into the residential community through Sustainable Merton to engage with them and encourage them to get involved in all the projects that are going on. Now, the green economy theme is a large theme, and we last had our public meeting on the 24th of February, and I think what we've done since then is very much find out what's going on. I'm sure many of you will recognise that in the borough we have a plethora of small projects that are all doing very good things in terms of greening the borough. And what we would like to do is really help them to grow and extend their reach and make bigger impact by bringing that together into a collective. So the one that I wanted to really focus on is something there in the bullet points, which is called Merton Abbey Mills Circular Economy Hub, which sounds as if it's already there, doesn't it? But it isn't. It's a concept, and it may not end up in Merton Abbey Mills. But what this is about really is taking all those projects, as I said, that are doing activities with people. We've got, for example, the Cycle 24 project, which Cycle 42, isn't it? I always get the numbers the wrong way around. But anyway, that is based in Merton Abbey Mills, which is collecting cycles from residents to then upcycle those, if you like, to be workable bicycles for refugees. So that's a great example of an initiative that can be built, I think, and extend its reach. So the concept behind this is to bring these initiatives together into a kind of circular economy hub. Whether that's actually a physical hub or a virtual hub is yet to be seen. Ideally, it would be a physical hub, but obviously we need space to enable us to do that. And as Ramya has said, we have already spoken about that concept with two funding sources who were both very interested but haven't put forward any money as of yet. So we will continue to work this up. And I think one of the things that I would say is, you know, we can do small things very quickly, but to make the massive big step change that is required to meet the carbon zero targets, we need some substantial step change being made. And that's why I think, for me, looking at the circular economy and a larger project is what I am really taking the feedback from that session that we did with residents back in February to work that up. And things don't happen overnight, but we are persevering and using every opportunity to talk about the concept with those that we think could support it. So yes, that's kind of an update from me. I'll pass over to Carola and she'll update you on some of the other items there.
Yeah, thank you, Diana. Yeah, so my name is Carola and I'm the co-lead for Green Economy. As Diana mentioned, we started earlier this year. We had our first meeting in February, and ever since we've been meeting different champions, if you will, in the community, kind of trying to connect the dots. And also thinking ahead of what other things could be done in order to, I guess there are two areas, is increase awareness of how we could go about greening the economy. And secondly is actually encouraging participation and behavior. On that, I would just introduce myself because I like the topic, so I went straight in. But just so you understand where I come from, I've been living in the area in Merton 8 years. I'm a market researcher, marketing professional, so marketing and sociology by degree. And behavior change, for instance, is something that is really close to my interest. So I took this position being mom of 2 kids as well, because I believe we need to invest for our present and the future. And I was doing already work on the stream of sustainability and green economy through the school shoes or hat, if you will. In terms of what we are kind of working at the moment and what we are seeing could be happening in the near future is again amplifying the existing green economy champions. One, as Ramya mentioned, one of the areas that is kind of falls into our responsibility is to engage the community. And we understand there are different groups doing amazing things at the moment, and we are trying to sort of make it even more prevalent in social media and other channels. By doing that, and through doing that, we are learning with them, and we are trying to, I've been in conversations with different of the groups you can see listed here to actually move the agenda a little bit further. And this, for instance, moves into talking about with community champions about how to actually expand TerraCycle hubs. So this conversation is happening at the moment. TerraCycle, as you might be aware, is the hard to recycle organization that works really with the willingness to help from the community residents. But it doesn't stop there. It does involve as well businesses, and another part of the TerraCycle bullet point, if you will be actually talking to TerraCycle about how best to engage the businesses in the borough to invite consumers to leave the hard to recycle items at the store level. So conversation are taking there, and I hopefully by the end of this year we might see more residential TerraCycle hubs mushroom in the borough. Package Share is one app that exists already. It's been running for more than a year. It's actually led by someone in Cornwall, and it expands the whole nation. This is something specific that requires a lot of volunteering input in a way that relies a lot in word of mouth. So we need to talk to other residents, we need to talk to businesses about this app that exists, and it's all about reducing wastage by giving our packaging, the packaging we receive as a consumer, to the businesses that need the packaging to run their operations. By doing this, we reduce wastage, and also we reduce, we save money. Businesses save money avoiding buying new packaging. This is just to give a hasty description, but I'm very happy to follow up on this meeting with a proper link and more material that will make you understand what it is, and actually how to understand how easy it is to talk about this app to your businesses or to your local stores. When you just go and buy something, you just can show a screen grab and explain, and with uniting forces, we could actually make this increase and save more wastage. In terms of the rest of the bullet points, and in order not to cannibalize the time for the rest of the team, I would concentrate rapidly on green investments. It's something that is in conversation, but the idea is to have a session informative for residents to understand more about what they could actually do with their sort of savings, some money to invest in a way that doesn't go to those companies that are involved in creating or in provoking more of a climate change. Secondly to that is a pension scheme. So Make My Money Matters, which is a non-for-profit organization, is willing to participate and give lots of hints and increase awareness of how best to have our pensions in a way that contributes to the environment. And a school climate action event, this is something that it might be happening next week. We are hoping that's going to go ahead, and it's talking to head teachers and eco teachers about Let's Go Zero campaign. And to be honest, it's all about discussing how best schools can build up their sustainability agenda and move it from today onwards. With that, I'm going to stop. I'm conscious of time, but happy to discuss any questions after all.
Hi, everyone. My name's Kelly Gunnell. I'm the community lead for the Greening Merton theme. Just going to give a quick update on that. We have two main projects that we've been working on in the greening theme. The first one we called Urban Relief, which has its aim to look for sort of those unused spaces around us, which have the potential to either have trees planted or improved planting for biodiversity and climate resilience. And the other project is Merton Garden Streets. And in our initial projects that we set up, we had a huge amount of interest in both projects. The But Merton Garden Streets is a project which is running over the summertime, pretty much from April to August. And it ended up being quite time intensive. So we put Urban Relief Project to the side, but I'll come back to that in a little bit. Merton Garden Streets is a project which is aiming to, on a street scale, to encourage people to get out and plant up their streets, focusing on their front gardens, but also on aspects of the streetscape. And we've been blown away with the enthusiasm and uptake, particularly around wanting to plant up tree pits. We set it up so that people who are interested can volunteer to be coordinators for their streets, and then they register their street, and then they can work with their neighbours to get their neighbours involved and encourage participation. And we allocated 3 planting days through the summer. We've had 2 already. By the first planting day, we had 60 streets registered, and by the second planting day, 77 streets registered, and we've had a few more since then. So really our initial target for this, the first time doing it, was only 50, so it's been hugely successful. Of course, just because the street is registered doesn't mean they've managed to actively engage. There's obviously been huge variations in participation. And it's really largely been possible, firstly, from the sponsorship, which we've got, which has helped us to buy plants, which we've given out to the registered streets, and then they've gone on to plant them. We do encourage people to source their own plants, either germinating themselves or doing seed swaps and things like that. But the plants that we've received through donations has been, I think, a big part of getting neighbours involved and some of their enthusiasm. And we can really see that happening on the Facebook group. As of today, we have 502 members of that Facebook group, and people are posting every day, not even just about things happening, you know, in their local street or corner, but things that they see out and about. And there's conversations happening about best practice and other things to do with biodiversity. So it's really been great to see the uptake. And I regularly get emails from people outside of the borough who are like, how can we make this happen within their own borough? Because even though there are projects like this around, they tend to be quite localized. And we've partnered with Green the Grid, who operate in Southfields, but I think they've only got 12 streets maybe that are part of the grid that they work on. And I know there's schemes like this in Balham and Tooting, but I think they are very local, and we're unique for trying to get this across the borough, which probably is a good point to mention that the distribution of the streets is obviously quite Wimbledon centric and a little bit in Morden, but we do see a big hole in our distribution around Mitcham, and that is something we'd really like to address if possible. So if anybody does have ideas how we can get more people from that side of the borough involved, that would be really good. What else to say from there? Some of the challenges we've had with that project. It's been good that we can use our partnership with the council to make sure that the way people are planting up fits with, you know, the council's ideas. But this has been, we've had to challenge the council on some of the ways of doing things as well. And so there's obviously been a little push and take and give and tension between what some of the things that people want to be doing, such as putting hard edges around tree pits, and what the council thinks is safe. So we've had one meeting with some of the Green Spaces team and ID Verde, and we've sort of agreed on some guidance, and the proposal is that we'll work on a joint e-pamphlet together with examples of best practice. But yeah, I think it's it's not finalized. There are still some room for going back and forth on things. I guess the other thing, just other news with that, one of the projects associated with Merton Garden Streets is with Clarion Housing, and they awarded us some money, £3,000, to do a demonstration street. But due to a lot of admin issues, we haven't been able to take on that money. You know, we needed to have public liability insurance, and because we're not, you know, a charity or you know, registered group, you know, that's been some teething problems. So what we've done is we've said that Crew Energy can take on that project and receive that money, and we'd work in partnership with Crew to deliver that project. So it still isn't yet launched. It isn't really off the ground yet, but we have identified an area, if not a street, to focus that demonstration street. So I think it's going to be on the All Saints estate in Wimbledon. So yeah, I think I'll leave that, you know, with Merton Garden Streets, just to say that we've got one more community planting day coming up in July, and then we're going to run a little competition with maybe 4 categories and things. And Centre Court, one of our sponsors, has agreed to offer packages for that. And I think even though this project probably can't talk, you know, it's hard to monitor or really measure how much impact it would have on carbon reductions, but what it has done is really engaged the wider community, specifically around biodiversity and some of those other related benefits, co-benefits to planting up, such as reducing, you know, stormwater runoff or helping with filtering pollution and things like that. And I think if we're able to push this project forward in, you know, in the following years, we can start to do more things around like depaving and things like that. So I think it's really been great for getting the excitement and enthusiasm and introducing lots of people to these topics. And so many people that have joined the project saying, I don't know much about gardening, but I think this is a great idea. And so really it has been a learning experience for lots of people and really helped on the engagement side. And as Ramya referred to, sort of the well-being side. So I think it's been a huge success. The Urban Relief Project, I had to put aside for a bit just because Merton Garden Streets was taking up most of my time and energy. But what we have managed to do there, Ramya mentioned, is apply for some money to collaborate with Kingston University and particularly their landscape and planning department. And that project, if it's successful and if we get the money for that, the Kingston University team will create a systematic mapping of the borough to identify those sort of unused little spaces which have opportunities for planting. So that could be a really exciting initiative. So there's more happening on the urban relief, but that could be a project that we pick up in the autumn time, which would, you know, coincide with tree planting time. And yeah, just on the slide there, just to say that we are looking for someone else to co-lead on this theme. It has been hugely time intensive for me, and I think that's has been one of the failings of this. Even though we have had a lot of enthusiasm, a lot of people wanting to volunteer, when we've put out requests for specific job roles within even just the Merton Garden Streets, people get very commitment shy as soon as you try to make it formal and official. But all the other themes in the Climate Action Group do have 2 people leading on their themes. So if anybody does have or knows anyone who has interest in planting or biodiversity and a bit of experience and is also proactive and organized, and you think you could give something to this, then yeah, we'd love to hear from you. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Kelly. So next we've got Jodie on buildings and energy.
Thanks, Dom. My name is Jodie. I've lived in the community for about 13 years and have a long-standing interest in sustainability, although my professional background is within universities in the university sector. But I just recently joined the group as the co-lead for buildings and energy along with James Stetler. So we're both relatively new to our role. So you'll see our slide doesn't have quite as much information on it because we're still getting going. But I'm very excited to be a part of this project because I do have a long-standing interest in sustainability and carbon reduction. And of course, within Merton, the bulk of our carbon emissions are really coming from buildings and how they're built, how we heat them, the energy we use to run them. And so our group is really looking at ways that we can address and improve what we're doing in those areas. Of course, it's a very big area and rather complicated. So at this point, I think a range of activities and areas of focus have been discussed. The main project that is underway is the school energy advice cafes. And Ramya, who's on the call today, who you've already heard from, is going to talk a little bit about that project because she's been instrumental in getting it going, and she is more knowledgeable about it than I am at this point. So you'll hear from her in just a moment. But I think within this group, one of the things that struck me, and one of the reasons I was interested in getting involved, is I think that there are some sort of less complicated, easier wins around educating and creating awareness about buildings and energy and things like building fabrics and thermal efficiency, so that people begin to understand why it is so important and the impact it does have on carbon reduction. And there are some things that will be much easier to do, such as helping people understand the impact of changing to LEDs or putting devices on standby within their home, things that they can do to be more energy efficient in their day-to-day lives. But then, of course, there are other things that are much more complicated around retrofitting homes, insulation, the way that we heat our homes, and those sorts of things. So I think that one of the challenges for this group will be to identify a few discrete projects where we can address some of those different issues. The School Energy Advice Cafe is really designed to reach out to students and to use the topic of carbon reduction as an educational tool, but to also have them take that information back to their homes and to begin to educate parents. So as I said, you'll hear a little bit about that in just a moment. But one of the other ideas that's come up in this group is the idea of doing some sort of Green Homes Award, and doing something so that we can really identify some of the standout homes that we currently have in the borough, so that people can see what their neighbors are doing and how people are making the necessary changes in their own homes. So doing something like an awards, or even sort of a top 10 list of fabulous eco homes, something that we could do to really help people see projects play out and kind of have a better idea of how and why it might be beneficial for them to undertake projects to make their homes more energy efficient. And I think alongside that, there could be opportunities to do talks or webinars, or to feature local architects. For example, we know that we have a local architect who has built a passive home in the Wimbledon area. And wouldn't it be wonderful for people to hear about that project itself and to know about more resources that we have locally for them? So I think I might stop there for now and ask Ramya if she would like to say a little something about the energy advice cafes.
Yeah, the energy advice, so energy advice cafes are workshops that have been held by community energy organizations around the country. And their main purpose is to help with fuel poverty reduction. And a big part of that, it involves telling people how they can reduce their fuel and water, energy and water bills by a range of measures, including tariff switching, and also introducing some behavioral changes which can reduce their energy and water consumption, and as a result reduce their bills. When we talk of climate change, obviously the reduction, changing your energy consumption patterns also means directly reducing emissions that are associated with the energy consumption. So there are different groups that you can target that obviously are vulnerable to fuel poverty. And through Community Energy London, we attended a workshop where they said very clearly that one of the hardest groups to reach is actually schools and school children. This is, and I think they had done some analysis behind why usually energy advice cafes, it is a new concept, although it's been going around in the country, and it takes a lot of trust building that's required for people to come and attend these and learn and find out more about what these are all about. And especially given COVID and not being able to do face-to-face outreach activities, I think some energy advice cafe projects have been impacted in terms of how effective they have been because of that, and because of the inability to build that trust within the community. Given that we did a bit of research, learned that yes, there are primary school age children and young families is an area, is a group that is underserved in the borough. So we focused on that group. There are other residents with other vulnerabilities who are already being helped in this regard by organizations such as Thinking Works. So this project basically, we've spoken to, we hope to build or gain the trust of the school community by going through the council's school improvement team and speaking to the heads and sort of deploying the project in multiple ways. We'll do some workshops and projects that the students will get involved in. It'll be part of their curriculum, but the end result of that will also be inviting the students and their families for Energy Advice Cafe workshop within the school premises, and also handing out low cost energy saving devices to the families that attend. Such as LED light bulbs, radiator reflectors, and draft protectors. So it's meant to be a holistic project for an underserved group within the borough. And hopefully, yeah, and which will result in significant behavior change. We do believe that if the children get excited, then the parents get excited, as opposed to the other way around. So yeah, so that's the Energy Advice Cafe project. If anyone has any questions, happy to discuss that when we have not the breakout room, but the time for discussion.
Thanks, Ramya. And I have to apologize because I am going to have to drop off the call in a few minutes, but if anybody who is at this meeting is interested in learning more about the School Energy Advice Cafes project, or if you have some ideas about the Merton Green Building Awards, I would love to hear from you. And I know our contact details will be shared. But yes, thank you.
Super. Thank you so much, Jodie and Ramya. So next we've got Mahmood and Luke on the transport theme.
Thanks, Dom. I'll be quite brief because I'm conscious of being last, and that it'd be great to have a discussion with everybody else that's here. So I'm just going to say a few words about Big Pedal and Cycle Buddies, and then Mahmood's just going to say a little bit about the Neighbourhood Car Free Day. We were the last group, as you can see from that, the last group to launch only at the end of May. So we're slightly less well developed with some of our projects than some of the others. Having said that, actually, Big Pedal, we sort of got the ball rolling a little bit ahead of that meeting, and that was I think just about 6 volunteers going out to local schools about the Sustrans Big Pedal event, which, as the name suggests, is about getting kids to pedal to school, but also roll and walk to school as well. And I think they're just about to rebrand that, but really kind of working from a quite standing start, we ended up getting twice as many schools. I think 20 something schools signed up to that. Twice as many schools as participated previously, and actually as a follow-up to that, that allows Sustrans to have kind of conversations with all those schools about their sort of wider transport plans and things. So it's that 1 week or 10-day period when kids are encouraged to go to school by active means, but it's also then a sort of longer term follow-up. So that was a sort of quite quick win quite early on. The Cycle Buddies scheme, like other projects, is very much working in partnership with other organisations that have already got things up and running. It's about kind of amplifying the reach and the benefit of those. So Cycle Buddies was launched a couple of months back by Merton Cycling Campaign, and the plan with that is to look at how the Climate Action Group can both understand kind of how that's working. I think they've had about 12 or 15 kind of pairings made between experienced cyclists and people who are wanting to get on their bike as a form of transport. So it's very early stages, but being run across London. And yeah, so learn about from those early pairings how things are working. But then also as we get into most likely into actually next spring, or sort of end of the winter and early spring next year, how to do quite a lot of promotion of that to get more both experienced cyclists and new cyclists paired up across the borough. So there's probably a couple of sort of months of learning and planning around that before then a sort of a big push into the winter and spring on the Cycle Buddies scheme. But it's certainly around that one. There's definitely scope for more people to help out. Just getting more experienced cyclists, anybody that's got connections to community groups where people might be interested in cycling more as a way of transport. Anybody that's got an interest in active travel and cycling would be really great to hear from you. But Mahmood, if you wanted to say a bit more on Car Free Day, which is probably a little bit more of an involved and own project by the Climate Action Group.
Yeah, thanks very much, Luke. As for the other transport things, so with the Car Free Day proposition, we're still in quite early stages of developing the idea, but it is World Car Free Day every September the 22nd. So we've got a target to try and aim for, to get something in place which corresponds to and which can leverage World Car Free Day. And the principles are straightforward, and the council has processes in place to enable street parties and so on, which achieve the basic end of being able to close down a residential street for a period. The practice, however, is much more involved in terms of getting sufficient interest in a local neighbourhood for support for the temporary closure itself, as well as organising features of the closed street to be set up in the, imagine street stalls and activities and local neighbourhood actions. But at the same time, we recognised very quickly that this is a really good opportunity to try and showcase a lot of the other activities going on around the Climate Action Group. But as I said, the big challenge is actually getting people involved, finding people who want to be involved in starting, arranging a car-free day in one of the streets in their immediate neighbourhood, and getting them involved in sufficient numbers to be able to make that happen. So we are looking for better ways of getting the proposals out, getting people to come forward, and that is the key barrier, is trying to find people who are able to give up the time to organise things on a very, very local level. But we will try and make the best use of the summer to make that happen.
Super. Thank you all so much. It's really, really exciting to hear about all these projects in one go, and I really can't thank the community leads enough for all the work that you've put into this so far, because it's really great to see everything that's happened. So we're now coming to the more interactive part of the meeting, so thank you to everyone else for your patience. Before we move on to the next item, which is going to be kind of a bit more of a feedback session and looking at what's been achieved and what the plan is moving ahead, we just wanted to pause for any questions on what's been discussed so far. So maybe if we take a couple of minutes, I don't know if anybody has any questions. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to see hands come up, so please just just introduce yourself and ask your question if you do.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, I'm Sherston. I live in the Rains Park area. I just had a few thoughts regarding the, so I'm going to just walk away from where the TV is actually, because I think I was on mute all that time. So in term, I was interested in the urban relief thing. I had a similar thing that I was hoping to do in terms of our local school where my son goes. There's a bank of land on that I think needs to be used and utilised. And I thought similarly, you could probably go across various schools in Merton and approach schools just saying, how can this little bit of land be used, and how can the students and the pupils get involved? So that's something I've been looking at, and I've had conversations with the school that I'm starting to sort of create that thing. And I suppose I'm interested to see whether there's a kind of model that could be created that you could then approach other schools and other. I think there's already initiatives like that going on, but I think it could be increased and made more normal within all PTFAs and that sort of thing. And so then you've got groups kind of engaging, and it then passes down to the next generation of PTFA families. That was one thing. So not really a question, but just a thought. It may already be well covered. I mean, I only have my experience with my own school where it isn't covered that much.
Drop me an email at cag.greeningmerton@gmail.com.
Okay.
The contact details will be on the last slide, and we'll share.
Great.
Those.
I won't write that down then, because I'm not that fast at thinking.
Ramia's put it in the chat.
Thank you. So the other thing I thought would be interesting, you were talking about, oh my gosh, what was it? In terms of the community energy workshops, I think it's to do with that. Basically, one thing, I'm going to be doing some greening measures in my own home, and I wondered whether there was any value in videoing the process. It's a case of my home is an old home. It's pretty inefficient, and I'm hoping I took advantage of the Green Homes grant, and so I'm having a measure put in potentially quite soon, and I'm considering Cruise thing as well, of having an audit done. So I was thinking, is there any benefit in videoing the process so that in a way you could create something that showed people what it's like to have that process done, and so that they can, it makes it seem less, I mean, I don't know how far I'm going to go, whether it will be of value, because maybe it's not far enough, but I thought if any of it was of value, then it could be sort of like an insight into the process, and maybe give people something to make it feel a little less daunting potentially. So that was one idea. I don't know if that sounds like a thing, or if it sounds like it's just not really relevant. Either way, I'm up for offering my house as a guinea pig. Yeah, so that's it really. Those were the things that I was, and I'm also up for. I mean, I know you were saying when people are actually asked to do things, they don't always come forward once it's a commitment. I'd be up for dedicating some time to stuff, but I mean, I have to be asked quite specifically, because I feel a little sort of naive and ignorant at this stage on what to do, but I'm up for stuff. So
Thank you, Kristen. I think Kelly can comment a little on the urban relief project inquiry that you made if she wants, but I think James and Jody would definitely really appreciate the opportunity to use you as a case study or your home as a case study. In fact, we did that in the council's climate action strategy and plan that was published. James's home, which had been through a retrofit, was mentioned. There weren't too many details, but that was the case study. And I think, and Diana probably, because Sustainable Merton's doing, releasing handbooks, probably finalized, but for future documents that they might release, I think it's brilliant because they definitely demystify the process, and something like a home retrofit definitely needs demystification. So if there is such a word, but yeah, that would be really great. So if you don't mind just dropping an email to the buildings and energy theme leads as well, that would be great. And then they can pick up with you on how to go about it.
And all those details are
they're all on the website.
Okay. Great.
I'm conscious of time, so it might be worth just quickly jumping back to the slides. Thank you so much, Kirsten. That was really, really lots of good suggestions there. And yes, all the contact details are on the last slide, which we'll share with you. So I'm just going to try and resume sharing again. Sorry. Can you see this again? Yeah. Super. So just to kind of help, we're going to be moving now to look a bit more at getting some more feedback from you on what we've been doing so far and the next steps. So just to give you a little bit more information and to inform those discussions, I just wanted to give you a quick overview of the success criteria that we set for the group and some initial feedback that we've received over the last couple of weeks through a feedback survey. So what makes for success? We identified 5 key aims for the climate action group, and these include actually delivering projects which reduce emissions or help us adapt to climate change as a borough. Also engaging with the full diversity of Merton's residents, businesses and organisations across the borough and ensuring that the group is inclusive and fosters a culture of respect. The third one is accessing the financial resources, skills and manpower needed to successfully deliver those projects. And then operating and communicating effectively with both the community and the council. And finally, delivering projects which are led by the community that can't be achieved by an individual or the council alone. So those are the kind of 5 main aims that we've identified for the group. And it would be useful to kind of get your thoughts on how you think we've delivered against those and what you think might have worked well and what you think we could improve on moving forward. So just to give you a really quick overview, in order to get some initial feedback on how people think the group is operating so far, we ran a short survey over the last few weeks. Unfortunately, given the timescales, we only had a very limited number of responses, and the majority of respondents hadn't participated in the group yet. So it's quite a kind of select, limited kind of, I guess, pool of people. But I just wanted to highlight a couple of points which might help feed into this discussion. So Merton Garden Streets is definitely the climate action group project which has had the most engagement to date, and that was reflected in the survey responses. So I think it's definitely worth thinking about lessons learned from that project which could be applied to other projects moving forward. As a few people have already mentioned this evening, we generally tend to have higher levels of engagement from the west of the borough, and that was reflected again in the survey results. We only had responses from people based in Wimbledon and Rains Park. So we really want to think about how we can engage more with the east of the borough. A few people gave reasons for not getting involved in the group, and these included that they hadn't heard of the group, but also not having enough time to get involved. Some respondents indicated that the communications and engagement had been working well considering the COVID restrictions, but others also suggested that more should be done to get more volunteers involved, including young residents, and also potentially simplifying and linking up initiatives to improve the comms. So those are some very kind of high level comments that we received through that survey, but it would be great to hear some more from you all now. We were going to move into breakout sessions, but I don't think we need to do that now because we're quite a small group. I don't know if anybody has an issue with us continuing recording. Please let me know if you'd like me to stop recording, if that facilitates more of a discussion, but otherwise I'll keep recording because it's quite good for us to keep a record of what everybody's saying. So unless anybody has an issue with it, we'll leave that on. Super. So we've got a few questions here that we thought we could try and cover. So the first was how you all think the climate action group is performing against those 5 main aims, which we just went through. What's gone well and how we can build on those successes, and what hasn't gone so well and how we can change that moving forward. Getting your view on the forward plan, so the projects that have been covered this evening, what your views are on those and how you'd like to get involved. And also starting to think a bit more about how we can get more people actively involved with the climate action group, so actually getting people to come to meetings and taking action. So those were the main questions that we had. So I'm going to stop sharing so that we can see everybody. Did anybody have any initial comments on that? Leslie?
I have. Right, I'm probably going to put a spanner in the works here now. This is the first time I've been in this group. Now, I've had many, I don't really know really. I mean, your projects are highly laudable, but if you want to reduce pollution, I don't know what pressure you can put on the council. And I've had many conversations with them regarding CPZs, and they seem to think this reduces pollution. Well, it doesn't. It does not reduce pollution. You're charging people to park their car. And only 23% of the borough is covered by a CPZ, including myself now. But my car is an old car, so I will pollute every time I use it. I've suggested a congestion charge. They won't do it. So 73% of the borough are not involved in CPZs. Most of the people in CPZs are digging up their front gardens, so therefore that creates more pollution because everything's being flattened. No trees, no bushes, everything concreted. I don't get it. I don't understand why they seem to think that this is a solution to pollution. It is not. The other thing is, I don't know what the tree strategy is for the council, because they seem to be ignoring trees that are being demolished. And Mahmood knows about this from Plough Lane, and he's on a little WhatsApp group that I'm in. Aren't you, Mahmood? Yes, you can answer that later. With plastic packaging, there's nothing to stop the council bringing in a bylaw to prevent takeaways and shops using plastic packaging. They've done that in little areas in Dorset. I know, look, let me just finish, but because, you know, I can go on. And also want to know what their Abbotsbury Road parklet is, because I now live in Abbotsbury Road. I don't, unless you can confront the council. These little projects are really, this is not rocket science. We've had this before. I've been living in this borough for 36 years. There have been other little projects about little tap things in your taps to help you reduce the water. We've been doing that. It's been going on and on and on and on. And schools, whoever said about the schools, no, they don't recycle anything, nothing. And I work in a school part-time. They don't recycle anything.
I think that's the idea, is to go in.
Unless you can put pressure on the council, these little things, much as they are lovely, they're not going to make much difference, to be quite honest. And villages have sometimes these little things where they have garden things, and there's a big unit that goes around the UK.
Leslie, I'm really sorry. I'm just gonna.
I know, but I've just get exhausted trying to.
The purpose of this group is to focus on community-led projects, and we've only got 15 minutes left of the meeting, so I'm going to bring us back to that, if that's all right. But please feel free to send me an email for anything to do with the council. There's other channels in place to have those discussions about what the council is doing. The council has its own delivery plan, looking at what it's doing towards its own carbon reduction commitment towards becoming net zero carbon by 2030, and towards the borough target as well. So happy to have those conversations, but the purpose of this group is really to focus on community action outside of what the council is doing. So thank you very much for your comments, and please feel free to get in touch with me, but I think we'll move on to what this group can do, if that's all right. But thanks, Leslie. Does anybody have anything else that they would like to say with regard to the climate action group and the projects that have been developed? What you think has worked well to date, what you think hasn't worked so well to date, and any thoughts on how we could improve moving forward in the next 6 months?
I think you're absolutely right. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I think you're right. We do need to target the schools, and just, I'm not trying to add to what Leslie was saying, but I do think they're schools, and I think we could make quite a lot of difference if we branded it well, spread the right message, created engagement, because families were made to feel that there is something that they can actually be a part of properly. I mean, lots of families don't have time for this sort of thing, but the families that do, the PTFA families, and I think it could be changed. I think you could create prize game, you could take it to a community level so that this school did particularly well and there's a prize for the best school and all that sort of thing. I think there are ways to make it more engageable within schools, and I think that's probably a way. And like you say, you need champions within each school. You need to identify those champions, and you need to then kind of have a little system already in place, a model by which people can then transfer that information and the ideas and how they can own it themselves and make it into their thing. And then I think that once you establish that, like there was a time, I've been in the borough also for 30 odd years, and there was a time when we didn't go getting doing community events and try and raise money for schools and for PTFAs. That didn't used to exist. So, obviously over time things develop and people start to see different ways of doing things. And I think this, in the same way as now everyone wants their PTFA to raise loads of money, we could do the same with climate awareness and measures to change our attitudes and our culture within it. So I think it's a good target group, as I do think probably actually things like Scouts as well and all the other kind of community groups. I think we just need to sort of identify, list them, then get our champions within each one and try and create an actual model to work by.
Yeah, thank you.
It's workshop.
Go for it, Ramya.
That Carola and Diana mentioned, I think it's basically targeting all 57 schools. And it is precisely to talk about the range or how schools can set goals and the range of activities that they should be undertaking in order to achieve those goals. So it's a great starting point. I'm very happy to say that the head of school improvement at the council is very supportive of climate action by the schools. And she is, I know she's worked very hard to set up this particular event in order to start facilitating that. And also just to respond to Leslie's comments and some of the ideas she mentioned about what's happening in other boroughs, I think that all of those have the potential to come from the community as well as projects, but what we are struggling with is the resources and the people to put structure around it and show and demonstrate that they can be effective. And I think that often goes a long way to demonstrating to the local government as well that something can be effective. But what we do lack as is the number of people to support such initiatives. So if we can find more people to help with projects, then we can set it up and put some structure around it and actually implement them, and that might help.
I think that's exactly what, in a way, the branding model type, kind of giving people a system to work with, will make them feel more confident about pushing things forward, because they'll feel like they're a part of a bigger system. It's just, I think there's not been a lot of that in the past that would be able to be rolled out.
Thank you. Did anybody else want to come in with any comments, thoughts? I can't see any hands up. Tony. Tony, you're on mute. Tony, you're on mute. Oh, still can't hear you, Tony. It looks like you're coming off mute, but your microphone doesn't seem to be working. So your microphone might be switched off. Oh, I think I heard you there.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, right. It'll be worth listening to is another matter. Listening to Kelly on greening, I think it would be very useful if we had some kind of a very rough budget fund that then the individual projects could bid for. What I've got in mind is, we've heard about CIL funding. To what extent should any part of the CIL funding be allocated to this kind of group work? Secondly, we've got carbon offsets, and I'm never quite sure how those are going to come into the borough, but they are possibly there. We've also got government grants and GLA grants for all sorts of unusual projects that just come off the shelf quickly. But getting all of that down into a sort of budgetary arrangement means that if any of us have got the ideas in the groups that need some basic funding to start things off, we know where to bid from. And it should be, I think, a sort of group decision between the 4 groups. Is that a project that we really want to fund? Otherwise, it'll just be everybody doing whatever they want. So I think a budgetary arrangement at some stage would be quite helpful.
Can I come in there?
Yeah, thanks,
Thank you.
Diana.
Hello, Toby. I haven't seen you for a long, long time. Good to see you. The concept that I was talking about the circular economy hub, certainly in our initial project outline, we had built in some capacity building funds to support smaller projects, because I agree with you, there is a cost to all of this. It's not only the time of the community leads and all the people in the community that are doing things, there is actually a cost associated with it. And I think that's very tricky in these troubled times. But there is money out there. So I think I'm privileged because I work with 2 organisations that, have links to those funds and can see them. Certainly the local authority can, and I'm sure others in the room can as well. But that's why I think by coming together and talking collectively, we can get a much better feel really for what the priorities are and what the costs are. And that's certainly what I would be doing from the green economy theme.
I guess I'd also just say that if Ramya has been leading on the funding side for everyone, but she really is, she's been doing funding and engagement, and it's a full-time job. And almost within each theme, we need someone in charge of funding, because I know I see lots of opportunities out there, but don't have the time to pull everything together into a big funding bid. So really it takes, a dedicated person within each theme, as well as what you're suggesting as coordinating it amongst all 4 themes, which is, I think, is what the plan is to do with the Merton Council's Neighbourhood Fund, which is opening up next month, Martin said. I think there will be a discussion amongst the group to see which projects should put forward a bid for that, and how we do it. Once again, it's really time intensive to put together a bid.
Thanks, Tony. Did anybody else want to come in with any questions, comments? I can't see any hands. Did any of the other community leads want to say anything else?
I would just comment to what Tony was talking about there. I think the process of filling in a bid, completing a bid application already means that a project has to be reasonably well defined and have a an implementation path. So if there are projects which, you know, have gotten to that stage, then I would say it would just be a question of then finding out which funding pool to apply to. And my personal recommendation would be to just go and apply rather than waiting to hear whether there are other worthier projects or anything like that, because let that be the decision of whoever's providing the funding. Because if someone's put the effort to take it to that stage and develop it to that extent, then you've thought through a lot of the details, in which case it's worth consideration. So yeah, I do take the point though that we don't have a single place at the moment where we're pooling information about all the different sorts of funding that can be available. It is a little bit organic, as in when we find something, we make note of it and then we apply for it. So that's something that can change and improve.
Thanks, Ramya. I can also potentially come in just on the carbon offsets, Tony. So the council does have carbon offset funds which people can apply to for specific projects, but those projects need to demonstrate clear carbon savings, and they need to demonstrate additionality so that they're achieving things that wouldn't have happened otherwise. There's obviously different things that people could do to demonstrate that, but generally buildings and energy projects have very clear kind of carbon savings associated with those measures. So they generally tend to be the types of projects that we would look to support with the carbon offset funds. So yeah, just a little response to that comment. But yes, there is some funding available there which people can apply for. Kirsten, did you want to come in there?
Yeah, there was another thing. Just I wondered. I get bunches of ideas and things that come in like all the time, and they're not. Probably it would be a bit overwhelming if I just kept on sort of spewing them out rather. So what I suppose what would be quite useful to me is some way of knowing whether things that I'm suggesting can have legs. I mean, is there a way that people can communicate a little bit more, less like just on these meetings, for instance, but a little more like you can actually talk to somebody and go, there's this opportunity, there's a grant, I can follow this, it would mean this, I've got this idea, does anyone like it? You know, because I don't want to sort of just start going off on a tangent and everyone goes, that's not really relevant, you know, whatever. So
yeah, definitely. I think if those projects are specific to a theme, then please get in touch with the relevant theme lead, and again, we'll share the contact details for that. And if they're more just kind of general stuff, or if they're to do with engagement and funding more generally, then Ramya would be a good person to talk to as the community co-chair, but also happy for you to get in touch with me if you'd like to talk through any initial ideas. So again, all those contact details will be on the slide, but please do get in touch because we're really keen to make the most of that kind of energy and time that you're willing to put into it, and happy to talk ideas through and see how achievable they are.
Yes, exactly. Yes, because I think on engagement, I think I don't know yet. I've got a couple of people already interested who want within the school, but also who are wanting to open up a school group. And so I think that can open up wider. So yes, I mean, engagement would probably be something I'm quite into, and also greening activities, I suppose. Yeah.
Super. Thank you. I'd say probably Ramya and Carola are the best people to talk to about schools.
Okay.
And Luke, you've got your hand up.
Yeah, just on that thought, actually, it's something that I think Kirsten's great suggestion about kind of what other projects we've got in the boil, because the kind of, I don't know, the 10 projects maybe that have been outlined today are the kind of current live projects, but certainly, in something I should have said around the transport thing, Mahmood has probably got 20 or 30 other projects that came out of the Climate Emergency Working Group a couple of years back. So I guess I wonder, Dom, whether there's a way that we could capture all of the possible ideas that are being considered across each of the themes, and maybe just list them on the website. And then if there are other people like Kirsten or others who is interested in picking one of those up, or knows people who are already doing something like it, that we could at least have visibility of all of the kind of possible projects that were being considered that might just spark a bit of enthusiasm. Yeah, that sounds like a good idea. Thanks, Luke. So, conscious of time, I'm just going to quickly share my screen again, just to quickly run through the dates for the next meetings. Can you guys see these again? This slide here? Yeah. So just to flag that we're going to pause the Climate Action Group formal meetings over the summer, because we know that people have other plans. They're going on holiday. They want to make the most of the nice weather. So it's a bit harder to kind of get everybody together. So we're going to pause over July and August. And so to make up for those months, we're going to have 2 meetings in September, 2 meetings in October, a meeting in November. And then we're also going to pause in December, because obviously in the run up to Christmas, people get busy again. So we'll have the next progress meeting. So we have these progress review meetings every 6 months. We'll have the next one in January, and we'll combine that with the next engagement and funding meeting. So we'll share all these dates and we'll put them up on the website as well. Please do get in touch with any and all of us if you have any ideas that you want to discuss. Please also sign up for our Climate Action newsletter, as that's the kind of main route that we're using to share the kind of big updates regarding the Climate Action Group. So there's a link on the slides here, which we'll share. And just on the next slide here, we've also got all the contact details for all the people who've been involved this evening, all the different community leads. So again, we'll share those. I just saw that we've got people commenting, but I think that's just people going. So does anybody have any final remarks that they'd like to make? Otherwise, I'd just like to say a massive thank you again to all the community leads for all the work that you've put into this group over the last 6 months. It's really surpassed our expectations. So thank you very, very much. And it wouldn't have been possible without all your time and effort. And also to all the volunteers who've contributed to specific projects. And would really like to encourage everybody to get involved as much as you can, and please do get in touch. Feel free to get in touch with me if you want to discuss any of this. Anybody have any comments? No? Super. Well, thank you all so much for taking the time this evening, and hope to hear from you soon.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks very much.
Bye.
Bye.